So one bit of watercraft that I've picked up and still use today comes from boat fishing. You know, I'm quite lucky here on the Cotswold Water Park, lots and lots of lakes, and the majority of the time they're all gin clear. And some of these lakes that I've fished, you're allowed to use the boat. So of course you're going to be going out and looking over and peering over all the time, seeing the spots and trying to look for evidence of fish. One thing I noticed on all lakes is, especially when the sun's out, you're going over these areas and you get a little glint and you think, oh, what's that? And it looks like that's a bit of metal or something metallic down there. And you look over the boat and it's actually where fish have been feeding. They've eaten a shell, like a snail shell, crunched it up, obviously consumed most of it and spat the shell, some of the shell out through the gills and out through the mouth. And when it lays on the bottom, it's sort of that pearlescent colour on the inside of the shell, which refracts white really, really well. So it shines and glints in the sun. And that's totally natural. And I couldn't help thinking, wow, that's as of something visual down there on the bottom. You know, we're all trying to alert the carp's attention with, you know, I might be putting sweet corn in the mix or something bright on the bottom. But to me, those sort of baits, they can spell danger for the carp. They know what's, you know, they know the dangers. But having these little flecks of shell or whatever it is there, just glinting in the sun, I think that is a huge, huge edge and something that I've tried to incorporate into my fishing ever since. And this was really, really hit home to me when I was invited up to Raisbury on a guest session. This was in November, so it was really cold. And of course you can use boats up there. So I was just after bonfire night. I remember there was like quite smoke in the air travelling up there. So you're allowed to use boats, and again, that's a gin clear lake, so very much similar to the lakes around here, what I'm used to. And I went out into the boat and I'm trying to find an area, trying to find areas where you can see fish. Obviously, if you see fish, brilliant, but I didn't see fish on this occasion, so I had to go on what I could see visually. And I was looking, it all looked pretty barren, it's all about 7, sort of 8 foot. And when I got out at some distance, I noticed there was a silt patch with these little glints coming up because it's sort of getting into the evening, but I could still see these little white little patches down there, and it was shell. Obviously a fish had been in, it had been feeding at some point, and the shell was still visual, it hadn't been covered over in silt or debris. So I thought, well, that's all I've got to go on. I'm going to drop the baits there. At the time you could drop your baits from the boats. So literally dropped a single rod on that. The other rod, well, the other 2 rods didn't have nothing to go on. They was fished out into the other areas. And literally as it got dark, 4 hours, literally 3 or 4 hours later, that rod's ripped off and I managed to catch a Raisbury carp, which, you know, back then was awesome, a real highlight. And seeing those little flecks on the bottom really led to that capture. And as I said, I've brought that into my own fishing now. So all these lakes here on the water, or wherever I'm going, I try and look and see what's abundant. And if that's snails, I'll spend an hour or 2 picking snails from the margins. Even better if it's zebra mussels, because there's absolutely thousands of them on some of the lakes, and you can spend half an hour and you can fill a bucket. And I always smash some of those snails or zebras, so you're getting that lovely pearly white inside for a visual, but also, you know, putting this natural food out into the lake, which the fish are picking up and eating regularly, I think is a huge edge in the fishing. Crayfish are another good example. You can collect crays and do a very similar thing. So the more this shell, the more natural food combined with bait, I think when the carp come in, their guard is down somewhat because they're used to picking up zebra mussels. They never get caught on them. Snails, they never get caught on them. Same with crayfish. So that's probably the biggest watercraft edge I sort of try and bring into my fishing where it's applicable. And I think adding that to your mix is definitely going to get you a few more bites.